I'm gonna talk a few points about why I think um, not only LEC but basically every region has become worse at League, or at least it looks like that. Maybe not top teams in NA compared to previous years, and this I think has a lot to do with Fearless Draft. So the reason is because not only players need to learn a lot of new champions, but more simply because teams actually needs to learn more compositions. Because if you look at the time back then, especially the best Korean teams and arguably Chinese teams, they would play one, maybe two composition that they more or less um, perfected and play that composition every single game with a minor deviation because of maybe um, maybe some adaptive bans. Also, the banning became so much more easy, um, or I should say, it was so much more easy to do pick and ban before because you could keep on banning the same champs or do um, minor changes. Now, if it goes to um, 5 games, there will become so many less champs you can play, and often you will see quite huge difference in draft. And I think that's for most viewers actually more enjoyable. Maybe it's not, but I would assume for most viewers it's more enjoyable. But as a more, how should I say, perfection viewer, I my idol game would be a game where it's only macro and literally no kills would probably bore the shit out of every other viewer. But I think the Fearless Draft was a good thing overall for League. But I think those reasons are the main reason why um, it looks like they are actually worse than before, and you see a lot more mistakes um, than you used to do. And I truly believe players has become much better because it's so difficult to have such a big champion pool. So the other topic of the video is why I actually think not LEC specifically, but G2 might have lost some of the edge they actually had against Eastern team, especially Korean Chinese teams. And I don't think it's necessarily only because of the players. Of course, that has a lot to do with it. Because this is the World Championship final against G2 against FPX, and this is probably when Mickey X, Perks, Caps, Yakos, and Wunder, at least those four peaked, and they were so insanely good. Caps was probably one of the best mid laners in the world, and Perks was a crazy good AD carry. He had a really small champion pool from AD carries. He had two, maybe three AD carries he was really good at, and of course he could play mages. And Mickey X was just crazy. He was so good, and Wunder was probably one of the best top laners in the world. So obviously, having them peak at the same time in skill obviously helped a lot. But I don't think that is the only reason why G2 now lost the edge, only because they got Caps is not this in his prime. You can argue they don't have as many good players as they used to, but simply because actually because of Fearless. Because one of the reasons why G2 could sometimes in a best of three beat the best Korean teams, best Chinese teams, so dominant in um, what's it called, LEC at the time. It doesn't really matter, but one of the main reason when I looked at them, not only were they really good laners and understood compositions really well, but also one of the reason was they could play standard. They played standard compositions extremely well, but I also had a lot of pocket picks, strange picks like Pike and other picks you normally wouldn't see, and especially Korean teams. If they had found quote unquote the optimal meta to play, they would never deviate. They would play the same composition every game with minor changes and adaptation, but they would never pick something crazy like Pike, for example, or in this game Nautilus mid, and so on. So Korean teams were extremely predictable in what they would play, and you could more or less predict what they were going to ban because they did just minor changes in their banning according to teams, but uh, maybe pocket picks they would ban or picks that would maybe quote unquote counter their play style. And I think that was a major success for G2 because I have to say I think they were the best team in using pocket picks and changing up the tempo of the game because other teams were not used to it. But because of Fearless Draft, they players need to play uh, so much more different compositions, so many more champions. So I actually think Fearless Draft, in a strange way, actually nerfed G2. Um, Not necessarily because they got worse at it, but simply because um, Korean and Chinese team got so much better at dealing with it because now they actually meet uh, weird champs, quote unquote, or uncommon champs much more frequently in their own region, and it's more accepted to actually play not necessarily the 100% the analytically best champ or composition. So that's just some wild thoughts of why I think G2 got so much worse compared to the other teams, and not only because they got worse players.